All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and read this section 6 through 10. That's the last section. You didn't quite finish it all, but let me go ahead and read that in Galatians chapter 6. I'm going to begin reading in verse 6, and you guys pretty much covered 6, 7, and 8. It says, "Let him who is taught the word share in all things with him who teaches. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, he will also reap. For he who sows to his flesh will of the flesh reap corruption. But he who sows to the Spirit will of the Spirit reap everlasting life. Let us not grow weary in well-doing, or grow weary while doing good, rather. For in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all, especially to those who are of the household of faith." All right, well, that's the section you guys read last week or 2 weeks ago, and you had some good discussion on that. One of the questions, and these are kind of like review a little bit. So one of the questions I have in here, when it says in verse 7, God is not mocked, I really wanted to ask specifically this question. God is not mocked, but how do people try to mock God? You know, we're saying he's not mocked. You can't mock God, but in some people's minds, they think they actually can. And Paul's point is, you can't. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to illustrate when you answer that question, when we answer that question, we're going to be able to come back now and show how people today are actually being mocked and getting away with it. With God, you can't. So explain to me, God is not mocked. Can't you mock God? EJ?
No, because to me it sounds like against the law. To me it sounds like you can't mock him, but you can test him or try to go against him or try to be like him. But it don't work because today you do something to somebody else, they're gonna get you back. And he's saying you go to show whatever you do wrong, it's gonna come back home. Whatever you do, it's gonna come back. If it's good, it's gonna come back. When you do wrong to somebody else, they're gonna do wrong to you.
Well, and that's what we're going to get into when we talk about mankind. Specifically, Mike, about God.
God said if you live a certain way, then if you live a sinful life, then eventually, bad things are going to happen. You're going to be simple, etc. You're going to reap what you sow. The very next part says, for man sows, he will also reap. So, but men come along and say, well, no, it's not that way.
Okay.
I don't understand what God says, but my human wisdom trumps that.
Okay. What were you going to say, Warren? And if you didn't hear that, that's okay. Go ahead.
I guess I have a question. I'm not really clear about law.
Right.
Law, the word law itself. I think I have it in my mind, but I don't want to talk about it. I don't know well enough to talk about it.
Right. Well, you have this concept, like, don't mock me. Okay, don't mock me. With the parent with a child, it's easy to understand that. The parent tells the child, go clean your room. Go clean your room. And they don't do it. And the parent doesn't discipline the child. There's where the child gets away with mocking. Okay? Child gets away with it. Now, when God says, God is not mocked, and you're kind of right on the right track there. Tony, what were you going to say?
That he hasn't come back.
Well, he hasn't come back, but the idea that God is not mocked is that right now, if I mock God, oh, you think you're so great and powerful? I'll do whatever I want, God. Now, how is it that I have not mocked God?
Well, I don't know if this is what you're looking for. You're not going to get your punishment now, but you're going to get your punishment later.
Isn't there punishment right now? What's the punishment right now for transgression?
Well, you're not with God.
Isaiah 59, 1 and 2. Sin separates us from God. I don't care what you do, non-Christian or Christian. If you're going to try to mock me, if you're not going to do what I tell you to do, there are immediate consequences. And this is what we learn about parenting, right? You can do whatever you want, but there will be consequences immediately. It's when we don't enforce consequences, when we don't punish, they're mocking you. They're mocking you. Jen.
Well, I mean, but some people, if they're, I don't want to say true Christian, but I mean, if they're a Christian that has their conscience is sincere,
Right.
they're going to feel that separation. But if their conscience is sincere, they're not going to really feel that separation.
You're right. You're right. That's why they do it.
So they may not feel that separation, and
Right.
that's the problem we have.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. You're right on the mark. And so, we're trying to, man just really needs to understand, the seriousness of sin. And because of that, God is just clearly telling them, you're going to reap what you sow. You disobey me, you're separated from me. This is not a game here. We're not, children do it with their parents all the time. They play those games with their parents. And so the children end up mocking their parents, and the parents can actually encourage that, right? They can another word for encourage, thesaurus up here. Yeah, but they can be guilty of promoting it. You say, I don't know why my child mocks me. And well, you let him away with it. God is not mocked, because whatever you do, immediate consequences. You've got to repent, right? Or you got to become a Christian, or you need to be restored. One of the two. And that's what you're talking about, Janet. When our conscience is pricked, we make it right. Why did we make it right? Because, we're not getting away with it. God is just, and that's the difference between some parents, that's why we learn from God. It's like that old Andy Griffith show, the spoiled kid. The kid's crying, and the parents like giving into this kid's tears. And when Opie tries to imitate him, like Andy's kind of like, what are you doing? I'm throwing a tantrum. Oh, okay. Let me know when you're done. It doesn't faze me. And so when he sees that he's not getting any results, he stops. Parents have to understand that, because if you don't enforce it, I don't want to get into the parenting aspect here, but I just want to understand you're not going to get away with it with God. Ever. I mean, ever. Warren?
Maybe a classic example would be Nathan when he talked to David. David was guilty of adultery, murder.
Yeah.
And his consequences started immediately after that. It was like, going into all details, but it was pretty tough.
Yeah.
He had to go through that.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly what you're talking about.
And what you were talking about, Mike, is this the idea of you're going to what you sow is you're going to reap. Now, there are times when people mock God, and do they seemingly get away with it? Well, yeah. I mean, do the wicked prosper? There are times the wicked prosper. You say, well, how come they're not reaping what they sow? Do you ever know somebody that's climbed the corporate ladders by stepping on others and being evil? Yeah. They get away with it, right? Not with God is the point. You're not getting away with it. And that's what he's really driving home here. But really, you guys discuss it. Now let's move on. Now look what he says in verse 9. This is where you guys stopped, and we got to discuss it. He said, let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. My question for you guys this morning, think about it. How does one grow weary? Okay. How does somebody grow weary while doing good? Who grows weary doing good? Trey?
Well, a lot of times you want to be acknowledged for that good, so when you're not, you can grow weary. When you do good things for people continuously and you're not recognized for it, people will grow weary.
Okay, so there's one. Not getting recognition, not appreciation for what I'm doing, that can cause people to grow weary in doing good. Sarah?
When you see the people doing or succeeding and being popular, and you're being good, you're in the front of that can get weary.
That can grow. That can't it? I mean, that can really take its toll on you when you see you're doing the right thing, people are doing the bad thing. They seem to be getting ahead, and you're not. EJ? Yeah. Well, Joseph. I guess Joseph is a good example of somebody who didn't throw in the towel, and so they were giving us examples, and you're showing us EJ where Joseph says, you know what? My brothers sold me as a slave. I've been put in prison. I was falsely accused, and all that time he didn't throw in the towel. He didn't grow weary. Whereas that would be an example of what you guys were talking about. You grow weary when you're punished for something you never did, right? I mean, that's what happens. Being falsely accused. You can grow weary. I mean, you might have the best of intentions of helping a brother or sister, and somebody read something evil into that and said, you know what? I'm not even going to bother anymore. You know, you jump all over me, and I'm just trying to be nice. And there are times when people say, you know what? I've had enough. He's saying, don't grow weary. Don't grow weary in doing good. Mike, what were you going to say?
We do good. About some of the false prophets that did what God commanded, and even though God was pleased with them, they suffered for what they did. They were thrown in prison, and things like that. I mean,
Right.
Kind of to Sarah's point, she was saying that we see other people doing good, or we see other people prospering while we're doing wicked. We're doing good, and we're not necessarily receiving benefits, but it could be that think we do the right thing to lose our God.
Okay, that's right. No fault of your own. There's another big one here that comes, guys. You'll know the answer as soon as I give you the word. Show me how a person grows weary in doing good in the area of evangelism. Why is that?
Well, you're out there giving the word, and people are taking it.
That's exactly right. I mean, you have study after study after study, and people just quit. They don't want to obey. I mean, how do you not grow weary? I guess when we got to get into that. I've asked you, how does a person grow weary? How do you not grow discouraged how do you not throw in the towel? How do you, when you're falsely accused, or you teach and teach and teach and teach, and it just seems to fall on deaf ears? I mean, if anybody could have thrown in the towel as far as lack of results of teaching for close to 100 years and very little results, who's that? Who's that? Noah. Noah, preacher of righteousness. You talk about a guy that's it, I'm not even getting on the boat. You go through all this and nobody's listening. I tell you, folks, growing weary, it happens. So how do you prevent it? Well, Dave, give me one and then we'll answer the other question. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say, there's a good passage in Isaiah chapter 40 and verse 31. It says, "But those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength, they shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint."
Right. So you're talking about, you're getting us right into the next area. Okay. So what's going to cause us not to faint? What's going to cause us not to grow weary? What's the solution? And Paul was talking a little bit about that here when he talked about let us not grow weary while doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not lose heart. So there's one of the answers that we can say. Why won't I quit? Why won't I throw in the towel? Number one, we're going to get what? Heaven. Okay. So one of the reasons I'm not going to quit is because I want to go to heaven. Another reason why you're not going to throw in the towel? Safe?
Well, you have to look at the positives. Like with Noah, he saved himself and his family at least.
Okay.
That faith.
You got to look at the good one. When you're starting to grow weary, I'm going to tell you this much, guys. When you start to grow weary, you get tunnel vision. What's tunnel vision? You're not seeing the big picture. All you can do is you're looking at this and you're growing discouraged. Man, I can't believe that. Well, back up and see the big picture. There's a lot of good. There's a lot of things that are positive out there. Warren?
Well, in reverse of the immediate response, there's times when teachers reach people, evangelists, whatever, and you planted the seed. You don't know exactly when it's going to get watered for germinating. So it could be later at a time that it may not be wasted, is what I'm saying.
Right.
That should be the driving.
Exactly. Nancy?
In times of my weary feelings, I know eventually that God's going to relieve me from the worry or the stress because I have faith.
Okay. So you're looking, again, you're looking to the future. In other words, when you think of Joseph, we'll get back to Joseph again. Things were pretty gloom for him for a long time, right? Doom and gloom. But then something good came around. I'm not saying that if you've lost your job and you've lost your health that you're going to get a job and that you're going to get your health back. Not necessarily, okay? But maybe during that process of, it's not like you're not doing any good. And I think that's the problem. When you grow weary in doing good, we've stopped seeing this and we're focusing more on, I'm just tired. Yeah, but look what you've done. Oh, yeah. We have to look at the good. That's why he called it that. Don't grow weary while doing the things that are good. Because another thing that tells me this, what's going to keep me going, that if it is good, I'm not going to grow weary in doing good, because whatever I'm doing here, that means God is pleased. You might be hard on yourself. Well, what makes you feel good if Patrick, you get up here and you preach a sermon and you're really hard on yourself. What happens when you go home as you're driving home and you're complaining about your life?
Hopefully.
Yeah. So hopefully Nicole is going to encourage. It wasn't that bad, Mike, got to turn the heat off. Okay, it was turned on earlier to take the chill off. That was 62 in here, and with that sun, it's going to get up to 80 here today. Janet.
And when we grow weary, I think we're more focused on us. For me, what am I doing? What am I doing wrong? I think it's more.
That's it. Again, yeah, and that's the problem, because anybody here get depressed? Depression causes you to think wrong, right? So that depression can cause you to, I'm just going to quit, and that's kind of like Job's wife. Just curse God and die. Well, that doesn't even make any sense. Why would I do that? And so if you've been doing good things and you get weary of doing that, don't quit. Mark.
After plug in, here's Elisha after his ordeal with bells and all that. He ran down, it's like, Lord,
I'm the only one. That tunnel vision, guys, I'm going to tell you, that tunnel vision, we can come here today. I could go home today and say, I can't believe, I've counted like so far, and there might be more, 14 people that are not here. And I could go home and say, man, we had a small crowd today. Man, what could Debbie come back and say if all I'm saying is, man, there's just hardly anybody there today. Man, I'm just so down. What could she say? Yeah. We weren't alone. If you're just going to focus on who's not there, life can be depressing. Life can be depressing. Tina?
If you go through life and you don't have any trials and tribulations, then chances are you're not on the right path. If God knows that we're going to have times that's not good.
Yeah.
And He's never going to give us any more than what we can bear first.
That's exactly right. And so when he says, okay, here it is. Okay, when he says don't, what's he meaning? What's he implying? When he says don't, what does he imply? Yeah, so when he says don't, number one, it means you could. It's also saying you don't have to. You don't tell somebody to don't do something if they can't not do it. I know that's a double negative. You wouldn't say to your child, now don't breathe. Then you got to breathe, okay? But when somebody says don't grow weary, you don't have to. Okay, so that's telling me, Paul's telling the brethren here, you grow weary, it's wrong. You grow weary, it's your fault. Okay? You control you. You don't grow weary. Yeah, but they're making me weary. They look it. You can't, nobody can make you sin. Nobody can make you throw in the towel. Nobody can make you quit. Oh, I might tempt you. I might ridicule, make fun of you in the pulpit, which would be really wrong. But if you quit on the Lord, you've quit on him. You can point at, of all this should never cause you to quit on the Lord. I do, and I get punished, I get ridiculed, I lost my job, I'm trying to be a good parent. And look, if you quit on the Lord, it's your fault. There's no excuse for it. Then he goes on, let's get into this next section, verse 10. Therefore, because of that, he says, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all, especially those who are a household of faith. Now, you guys tell me, we didn't talk about this last time, what's the connection there then between verse 9 and verse 10? Because in verse 9, he's telling don't grow weary. And then he says, well, therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all, especially those of the household of faith. Mike?
We're being encouraged, not go weary, and start helping out other people and doing good for others, and you'll be encouraged yourself.
I'm going to tell you guys, the worst thing you can do when you're weary for doing good is stop doing good. You might look at this and go, okay, don't grow weary. So the solution to not growing weary and doing good is if I stop doing good, I'm not going to grow weary. No, that's what happened. Growing weary means you stop doing good. The solution to this is to keep doing good. That's how you don't grow weary, because it will help you. It will help you. In other words, you've been discouraged with, let's say, I'm in evangelism. I teach and teach and teach, and people have not responded. Well, keep teaching. Keep teaching, because that's going to help you get over that. Stay focused. Continue to do. And so that's what he's talking about here. So therefore, let us do good to all people, especially those of the household of faith. Can somebody tell me some things I can do? I mean, the verse doesn't say, Chuck, you got to give me book, chapter, and verse. No, that's a general statement. Give me some specifics. You got to come up with it on your own. When the Bible says study, it doesn't say when, doesn't say how long. You got to think for yourself. And so when he says, okay, let's do good to other people, tell me some things I can do. What can I do for other people that's good? Okay. Cards. Email. Tony? Pray for him. Okay, I'm just gonna pretend I'm writing. EJ, what can you do for somebody? Run errands. I love that. There are times when people get old and they can't do it. What else can we do for people, guys? There should be thousands of them here. Just rolling off your tongue. Okay. Take some food over to people.
Help in any way that you can. Offer that.
Offer. Yeah. That's what it takes. Somebody says something over here?
Their grass.
Mow their grass.
When you're out of town.
Who does that? Yes. Yes. Do good. Ask for help. Whoa, listen, wait a second. Is that doing good? Asking for help?
Yes.
Yeah, because you're doing them a favor. It's like going to the hospital. Man, thanks for being sick, so I have somebody to go visit. Now, we wouldn't say that. I've said that before. But you know what? That's the balance that Paul talked about. You have those that are in need and those who have money. You're going to help each other out. Really? Why? Because those being in need helps you to be able to give. It works both ways. I saw a hand. Nancy? Oh, absolutely. When I think about, to encourage with words, the encouragements that is there, Jen?
And that whole list, for some reason, asking for help is the hardest thing for people to do, and I don't understand why.
Well, it's true. What? You don't understand?
No, I mean, people, as far as Christians, people should ask for help when they need it.
That's right. Because we want to do good. Right? We want to do good. Okay.
I don't know that there should be things about.
Now, we do good for all people. Now he says, especially the household of faith. What's that mean? But why especially?
Those are our brothers and sisters.
Folks, there is a bond. There should be a bond within the body of Christ. Every time you say, well, Chuck, I'll do all these things for strangers. I'll do those for people in the community. I get complimented. I get noticed. I'm written up in the paper. I get a plaque for volunteering. I get the recognition. But to my own brethren, send them an email. We'll look around here today. They'll make an announcement. We're going to make an announcement today of some people that are sick. I already know ahead of time. There's some people that are sick. Well, somebody else will send them a card. Somebody else will send them an email. Somebody else will call them. Do you need anything? Well, I'm pretty busy helping those that are not Christians. He said, you do good to all people, especially those of the household of faith. And he's writing to the church here. He's writing to Christians. We look out for one another. We ought to be family, is what he's talking about here. Dave. That whole 12th chapter. That whole 12th chapter is dealing with that. Now again, keep it in its context here, guys, of these things. You know, that just seems like a lot of work to do. Now God tells us things that are in our best interest. How does this stuff help me? If I'm to do good to everybody, especially those in the household of faith, how does that help me? EJ? That's definitely. That's awful. But you know, think about your own brothers and sisters. How does that help me? Okay? It increases my faith. It helps me to be useful. It helps me grow. Right? It helps me grow. I mean, and it helps other people grow. I mean, especially when I think of my brothers and sisters and encouraging them. Yeah, you got to see that what God tells us to do is kind of like in the garden. You know, before transgression even existed, there was law. You think if you, boy, paradise, I want to be lost on a deserted island that has all the fruit I need. Perfect. Do you realize that in the Garden of Eden, they were given law? Before transgression, they were given laws. Law is a good thing. Things that are beneficial to us. And when we're thinking about, you know, because they were given work to do. Before there was transgression, they were given work. Tend the garden, keep it. They were given work to do. So would your idea of paradise include work? People are living for retirement. Paradise to God it included work, self-worth. And so we need to see that these things that he's telling us to do here, don't grow weary. I get tired. No, don't grow weary, because these things are good for you. And do good to all people, especially those in the household of faith. Why? Because that's going to help you. And you get satisfaction. It's better to give than to receive, as Paul said. Why? Because there's satisfaction that you're growing. I'll tell you what. You know some of the happiest Christians in the world? Who are some of the happiest Christians in the world? The workers. Those that are just working. You know who are the most miserable Christians in the world? Those who don't do anything. They sit back and complain all the time. Slide in, sit at the back row. Sorry. Over on that one. There's nobody there. But I'm just saying, you know, they'll just slide in. You know, like the last one's here, the first one's to leave. Last one's here, the first one's to leave. Don't want to get involved. Okay? And they don't want to get involved. When you see them, are they the most cheerful Christians you've ever met? They're the most miserable ones. Because it's almost like, oh, I got church. Okay, I'm here. Oh, I'm on for singing. Are you kidding? You know, it's like, what are you doing? The most miserable people in the world are those people who are lazy in the Lord. I guarantee it. You show me an exception to that one. I'd like to see an exception to that one. The person who doesn't do a thing, and they're the most happy, faithful Christian you've ever met. No. Those who are workers. That's the way it's supposed to be. Now, if I'm a worker and I hate doing all this stuff, I'm going to grow weary and I'm going to quit. I've seen it. I put in my time. I'm done. But you guys do. Don't ever stop, because God knows what's best for us. And that's what's going to help us get to heaven. Endure to the end that he mentioned right here. That's Revelation 2:10. Be faithful until death. And that's why he says in the latter part of verse 9, we shall reap if we do not lose heart. Don't lose heart. And I'm going to tell you, the devil's trying to get every one of us here to become like the Laodiceans, the most lazy congregation that ever exists. He just wants, you know, he said, okay, if this congregation runs, just let 2 or 3 be the workers. Let just be 2 or 3 be the workers. Everybody else just be the bench warmers. And if anybody needs encouragement, let's leave it up to the 3. Anything needs to get done, let's leave it up to the 3. Let's the majority be the takers and the 3 be the givers. Look, I expect people to come over to me. I want people to come and shake my hand. I want people to come over and encourage me. I want people to send me emails. I want people to let me know when they've missed me. Have you ever done that to anybody else? Well, no. Because they're not happy. They're not happy unless they're the center. And what I'm finding out here, no, we don't have to be the center to be happy. To be faithful to the Lord. That's my sermon for this morning. Okay. Next section. 11 through 18. Brad, start reading. 2 verses apiece. Let's finish up this chapter. I know we won't finish it, but 2 verses apiece. We'll zigzag. We'll go over to Mike and then up to Sarah.
Letters I have written to you with my own hand. As many as desire to make good showing flesh, we will compel you to circumcise only them that may not suffer persecution for the cross of Christ.
For not even those who were circumcised received the law, but they desire to have you circumcised, that they may boast in your flesh. But God forbid that I should boast except in a cross of our Lord Jesus Christ, by whom the world has crucified to me, being crucified to me, and I to the Lord.
In Christ Jesus, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision avails him, but in his grace. And as many as walk according to his rule, peace and mercy be upon them and upon them, for Israel of God.
From now on, let no one trouble me, for I bear in my body the marks of the Lord Jesus Christ. Brethren, the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ be with you here. Amen.
Wow. Guys, there's just so much in these few verses. Don't want to belabor the point, but I'm telling you, we study these things, not just to learn it. I mean, we can just get the information and leave, but the application is what's helping us to grow. So Paul, in his concluding remarks, going to be talking about his life, the marks that he bears. What kind of marks would Paul bear?
Probably the same region in which he'd been stoned.
I mean, anybody here immediately can think of a scar they have? Can anybody think of a scar they have and where they and how they got it? Yeah. I got one right here, hockey stick, right there. And I can still remember to this day, the guy that did it, and the blood's rolling, and somebody came up, the guy who did it didn't want to get in trouble when we were playing, and when it was dripping down there, some of the other players, Chuck, you got blood down there, and the guy got mad at me. Quiet! He didn't want him to know that he cut me. But you know what? Remember that my whole life. But that's not a battle scar. It's a Canadian scar, but it's not a battle scar. Did Paul have battle scars? I mean, you talk about being whipped, stoned, like you talked about. I mean, if anybody's going to have scars, marks because of his life, him. What are you going to say, Trey?
I just, when we read that, I thought of the thorn in the flesh was the scar that was shown everywhere.
There you go. Whatever that was, right? That thorn in the flesh, that was real. Some kind of infirmity that he had. Some people, even from what he said here in this verse, right? I wrote to you with rather large letters. What does that imply? Sometimes the people just think that he had poor eyesight. They think his thorn in the flesh was his eyes. I don't know about you. Any preacher today? It's like, man, you take my eyes away from me. Doesn't mean you can't preach, right? You can get Bibles in Braille, but you just see how it would handicap you back then, even today. I'm not saying that's what it was, by the way. I'm not saying, because we could also imply from that statement, see with what large letters I have written to you with my own hand. There are times when Paul dictated. Did you know that? The end of book of Romans. Paul wrote Romans, but Paul didn't write Romans. What do I mean by that?
Somebody else.
But did he write it?
Yes.
Well, he wrote it in the sense where he dictated it. And Tertius, it was the one who actually wrote it down. Paul didn't write it. But Paul's speaking by inspiration, and this guy records it. The fact that Paul says, I'm writing this with my own hand might also imply what?
He's writing it also.
But what would that imply, though, other than the fact that
I had trouble with hand coordination.
maybe, Mike? I think so. I'm more inclined to go along that line. What were we going to say, Patrick? Just that. Yeah. I write many letters to some good brethren. This guy I write to in the prison. Good guy. Can't wait till he gets out. He's just really turned his life around. Good guy, and he preaches while he's in prison. But when I write Chris, I'll type the letter on my computer. But after I print it off, then I write with my own hand my signature. I could just type in Chuck. But, I just feel it's more personable when you go ahead and write that. And sometimes, there are some times when when we have visitors, I'll write a letter and I don't type it. I'll just write it. I have very bad handwriting. But I just say, what is that? That's more personal, is what we're saying. That's more personal. And I get the impression here from Paul, like he's writing to the brethren at Galatia, and he's been pretty hard on them. And has he been pretty hard on the brethren? Do you remember anything in the book that he was hard on? Oh, you foolish Galatians. You're accepting another gospel, but it's not another gospel. Yeah, I mean, he's pretty tough on them. Okay, and then in the 5th chapter, you accept the circumcision, you've fallen from grace. Christ has profit you nothing. So he's pretty hard on them. And when you're hard on your children, and you may discipline your children, what do you do a few minutes after? You hug them, and you tell them you love them. Right? There's that balance. And so Paul, I see here, yes, possibly, but also a possibility is he's writing this to show that how much he cares for them, and he really loves the brethren there. So he's writing with my own, and it's exclamation, I'm writing with my own hand. Verse 12, as many as desire to make a good showing in the flesh, these would compel you to be circumcised, only that they may not suffer persecution for the cross. Okay, Paul is not done dealing with the false teachers that are among them. What does he tell us about these false teachers that are among them? He came right out and said it. He finally identified something. What was it? What's he saying to the brethren? So I'm going to tell you something. You really want to know the true motive? You really want to know why they have been compelling you to be circumcised? We might sit back and say, they just, these Christians just came out of Judaism. They were clinging to the old law. Now we're under the gospel. Now that you're Christians, you've got these people say, well, you need to be circumcised. That was under the old law. Okay, that's old law. But he's saying, here's why they're telling you need to be circumcised. And why was it? For a good showing. Well, why else? What was that, Denise? I'm going to tell you something, guys. One of the reasons why a lot of people want us to be liberal in our thinking, be loose in our thinking, is so we won't stand out from the crowd. Let's not preach on morality. Let's not teach strict about, drinking and marriage and modesty. Because, if we can be loose on that and teach contrary to that, then you know what? We're going to fit into the world better. We won't be persecuted. Life will be much easier for us. Oh, that's why you want to be loose on those things. And that's what Paul's talking about here. The reason why they wanted you to be circumcised, because what was happening to those people who were not circumcised? They were being persecuted. They were being persecuted. You mean you're not doing what the old law says? No, I'm not under the old law. And then you got to defend yourself. And there are times when we as Christians, we're put in that position a lot where we have to defend why we're doing something or why we're not doing something. And so what's the best way to avoid persecution? Just do what everybody wants you to do. That's it. Dave? Don't stand up. That's it. That's 1 Corinthians chapter 15. Stand in what you have received. And Paul is just telling them, now look, the sad part is, now, when I read that verse 12, if I was a member at Galatia, what would I be also learning from that statement? What would I be learning? You're not only telling me that's their motives, what else? But what else is the lesson? Well, the lesson that I would get from that is, oh, so you want me to be persecuted. You want me to face that. Yeah. I'm telling you, that's why they're doing it, is so that they can avoid it. And I'm telling you guys, you can't avoid this. Peter talked about that. When you will suffer as a Christian. Don't suffer as an evildoer. I don't have much sympathy when somebody, oh, Chuck, I got 10 years for robbing a bank. Why you robbed a bank? You know, it would be different if the guy says, I got 10 years and I was just watching. You know, I was in there making a transaction. I had nothing to do with it. I'm falsely accused. Well, then I feel bad for the guy. Falsely accused. But if you suffer as an evildoer, there's no sympathy there. But he says, don't suffer as an evildoer, but you can suffer as a Christian. And who's going to suffer as a Christian? Guys, who's going to suffer as a Christian? What kind of person suffers as a Christian? The one that's doing right. Exactly right. The one that's standing out from the crowd. You will stand out from the crowd when you do what the Lord tells you to do. It's as simple as that. And people say, well, no, that you only stand out when you compare yourself to an atheist. Now, I understand counterfeit money is so dangerous when it's almost like the original. But I'll tell you, when you look close, this is a microscope, okay? But when you look close, it's not even close between you, okay? Your body. I don't know what that is. I think it is. But when you look at two people, that's when it should match up. When you're comparing yourself between you and another religious person who's almost like what you read in the Bible, almost, it's just different. It's just different. How many times I quoted that line from Bette Midler? From a distance, there's harmony. You look at the world. You look at the world from the moon, what's it look like down here? Harmony, right? No wars. Get a little closer. There's not harmony. And so when he's talking about this, I see where Paul is telling the brethren here, that's what they're like. We're not like that. We're not going to be like that at all. And so what we're going to do, and I want you to do this for me, folks, and I'm going to have question sheets for you for the book of Ephesians. I'm going to give you question sheets for chapter 1. They'll be at the back on Wednesday. We'll finish up this chapter next Sunday morning, Lord willing. But then we'll get into the book of Ephesians, and you don't have to worry about the questions per se, because I'm going to be doing a lot of background. We'll do a background of the book of Ephesians before we actually get into that. And so, thank you for your comments today, guys. I appreciate it. And now it's cold. It's warm. Cool. Let's go see what we got.
I texted Kristen that.